All right, here's a little behind the scenes for our spawn sack floaters. If you do any back bouncing, bottom bouncing, surf fishing, you gotta use the Atlas Mike's bait floaters, bait sack floaters. Check this out. Look at this too. Got some tied here. We've been getting a lot of inquiries on bait sack floaters. A lot of people don't use these or might not even know they exist. We got a lot of different colors available. This is the assorted. There's pink, chartreuse, orange in there. This is the glow, which is really awesome if you're fishing in low light or in the dark. But the main reason you would want to use a bait sack floater is, one, if you just want to add some variety and contrast to your spawn bags, that's a really good way to mix and match colors of netting with the floater. So for example, maybe like a chartreuse netting, but then you use a pink floater. But the main thing is to fish more effectively in situations where you might be bottom bouncing, back bouncing, surf fishing on a lake where you want to just cast out, let it sit on bottom. These float, and they'll actually float your spawn sack up off the bottom, put it right in the strike zone instead of just letting your bait rest on the bottom. So I'm going to cover how to tie a spawn sack with the floaters and how you might want to go about that, how many floaters to use, what kind, things like that. We're going to go over that now. So it's super easy. I'm going to cover what we're using this evening to get this done. Number one, we got Pautzke Premium Trout eggs. And these are really effective for steelhead salmon fishing, trout fishing. This bait, this is a trout egg. So this is a real egg. This is not imitation. This is not fake. That's a real trout egg. Has really good quality, really good scent. And we're going to combine that with, obviously, the floaters. We covered that already. But we also have the Atlas Spawn Net and the Atlas Magic Thread. I'm going to cover from scratch how to tie this up. So just opened a pack of the chartreuse Atlas netting, and I just like to lay that out. A paper plate, tin foil, something. I mean, you can go straight to the counter, but it might make some other people in the household pretty upset. And then you got the floaters too. Those I don't like to cut open all the way because you can have a situation if you do that. These are pretty small floaters, so these floaters are about the size of your average egg. Trout eggs will be a little bit smaller than these floaters, but if you have like a salmon egg, coho egg, things like that, these are going to be pretty comparable in size and even like a little bit smaller than a king egg still. But what you're doing is you're taking some eggs, you're putting it on the netting just like you're tying a normal spawn sack. One of the most common questions we get though with these floaters is how many do I use? And that's really where you maybe can't go wrong depending on how you're fishing, but if you're going to use this for contrast purposes, so for example, you want to have a chartreuse bag and a pink floater for looks, and you like to fish with a bobber, I wouldn't recommend using more than one, maybe two max, because if you're running a bobber rig floating on the surface and you have a floating spawn sack, you don't want to affect your drift a whole lot by having a floating bait. So if you just use one of those, you're generally pretty good because the weight of the eggs will still weigh it down, and then you get the benefits of that contrast. But you want to do the exact opposite if you're bottom fishing. So if you're back bouncing or just drifting along the bottom or surf fishing, casting it out, letting it sit in the lake, you want that spawn sack to float up, and you really can't use too many. The other upside to adding these floaters is you use less eggs because it's filling up the spawn sack. So that's kind of a nice benefit. Your eggs will last longer. But I'll show you here. You just throw the floater in there. It doesn't really matter where it ends up, middle, edge, whatever it might be. And you're just going to go corner to corner like you're tying a regular spawn sack with the floater inside of it. And I always like to just bring corner to corner. I twist it a little bit to kind of tighten that up. and you'll see the floater kind of just settles in wherever. Doesn't really matter. But as you can tell with the chartreuse netting and the pink floater in there, kind of a nice switch up, nice variation to the spawn sack. And then we're taking our magic thread here, which I've got the clear or the white, but this comes in a lot of colors, and we're just wrapping a couple times. You cinch it, pull it tight, break it off, and same thing, you go the other way. Pull it tight, break it off, and we're almost done here. So now we got the tag end of the netting, and we're going to come in with the scissors and cut that pretty close. I mean, you don't want to cut right on it or you'll cut the knot. You can cut your little tags off if you want to. But that's what the chartreuse with a pink floater looks like. Like I said, again, if you're going to run like a bobber, or you don't want this to have a lot of impact on the action of the spawn sack in the water, just use one. Then that won't be able to affect it too much, because that floater, that one single floater, it'll just be overpowered by the weight of those eggs in that spawn sack. But if you're doing any type of bottom fishing, bottom bouncing, surf fishing, you're going to want to add multiple floaters to float the sack up. And the bigger the spawn sack you tie, the more the eggs there are to float up, and the more floaters you may want to consider adding. So I'll show you that now. Let's say our intentions are to surf fish and let this sack sit on the bottom of the lake. Maybe I want to add a decent amount of eggs, but to make sure this floats up, maybe I'm going to throw in 3 floaters. What's cool too is with all those assorted colors, you can switch it up however you want. If you want to do a chartreuse piece of netting and keep things the same, do a chartreuse floater. It looks awesome. If you want to switch it up like I showed you earlier with the pink and the chartreuse, or right in this one here, I'm going to do all 3 colors. This stuff is really effective too for dirty water, because you're just adding more color for the fish to key in on. So same thing, just letting the floaters go in there. However they end up, I'm not generally too picky about it. Twisting that spawn sack up to really firm it up and tighten up the netting around the eggs. And then same thing, coming in with the magic thread. Only need a few wraps before you pull it tight and break it. No knots with the magic thread, super easy, super quick. And what's really cool too is, so on this side you'll see the chartreuse floater worked its way to the edge. And then on this side you'll see the orange one kind of did too, but they're kind of buried, and if you look at it from this angle, you can actually see them glowing through the eggs. Looks really cool. These floaters have been around a really long time, but the glow, not so much, maybe a few years, and I think it's overlooked by a lot of people. As you know, steelhead fishing, what's popular about that? Getting out at the crack of light, first light, low light, even in the dark, and these glow really well and really help bring some visibility to your spawn sack in that low light. I'm going to combine that with our new Atlas Mike's lime color, which is a really bright fluorescent color. Not the same as chartreuse. If you look at them separate, you might think they're the same, but once they're side by side, it is a nice variant. And I'm going to combine that with these glow floaters, which I have here. They're the exact same as those assorted colors. But in the light, they're white, but they do glow in the dark. Alrighty, so I've got the glow floaters, I've got the premium trout eggs, I've got the lime spawn netting, and I'm going to tie that up here real quick. So I got, again, corner to corner, just kind of bringing it all together. It is imperative that when you're tying spawn, you don't just bring it together and loop it right now. Your sack will be all deformed. So you want to really take your time working it into a ball, spinning it around while you pinch it with your other finger. And that's what forms the spawn sack to a nice, firm, round ball. I think it works better in the water. The drift is better. It's just preference, but I think the fish like it too. So here's the thing. These floaters are killer. Look at that. Got 3 glows in there. Imagine that in the dark. So, I have my water right here. Check this out. Ice Mountain. There's no floater in this spawn bag. Look at that. That thing sunk to the bottom quick as an anchor. floater, boom, floating on the surface. So that's why I was saying, if you're running, you know, a bobber or something, you don't necessarily need a whole lot of floaters because you want it to get a nice natural drift. Look at that. Them premium trout eggs are smoking in there. I'm going to sidetrack. These premium trout eggs, they're fire. So here's the thing. You saw those milking in the, I mean, they're still milking. Look at this. This is awesome. Look at that cloud. Okay. So some people use these and love them. And then there's some chatter about these being not so good. And here's what you got to look out for. If you look at these eggs really close, I mean, this is a quality egg. This is what you want them to look like. When you get them in a store, the shelf life of these things is amazing. It's like a year. But if there are shops that haven't cycled through the shelf life properly, they're not going to look like this. So make sure you take a look at the eggs. You'll be able to see through the jar that they look real nice. And if they're past shelf life, then hey, just be honest with them. Get them changed out so we can get you some good eggs. But when they look like this, they tie really nice like this. They fish really nice like this. They milk like that smoke cloud that you saw. They have a really great scent trail. They're super effective. And like I said, you can switch it up if you want a floater. This thing is still milking. Look at that. Look at this one on the bottom. Smoke bomb. That's quality. That's what you want out of an egg. And, you know, if you really don't want to harvest a fish or deal with the hassle of that, this is pretty hard to beat. Or, you know, let's be honest here. If you just don't have a hen yet and you prefer your own home cure, this will at least get you there. So that's what I would recommend doing if you're looking to change up your rig for variation, or if you want to add some color or glow. It really helps in a lot of different situations. I want to show you what these spawn sacks look like in the pitch black with the glow floaters in them. Check this out.